right, guys, so here is your bell work for Thursday. We're going to do bell work, and then we are going to finish up the data analysis project from yesterday if we didn't finish it, and then I'll give you your MobyMax instructions. So the bell work for today is solve the following equations for x. Okay, we have two equations, 2x minus 4 equals 8, and negative 3x equals 15. So on both of those examples, I need you to move everything away from x so that your final answer is x equals a number. So please pause this video, go through, try to work these out, and then make sure you have the correct answers before moving on to my next instruction. Okay, so on the first one, right now x is being multiplied by 2 and 4 is being subtracted from that as well. And on this one, x is being multiplied by negative 3. So on both of them, we have to undo multiplication. On the first one, though, I'm also undoing subtraction. So I'm going to start out by adding 4 to both sides. That is going to leave me with 2x equals 12. So I've already made progress. And then to undo that multiplication, I'm going to do division by 2 on both sides. So I will have x equals 12 divided by 2 is 6, which will give me x equals 6 is my final answer. Okay, on the second one, I just have to do I just have to undo multiplication by negative 3. So I'm going to divide both sides by negative 3. I will get x equals, and 15 divided by negative 3 is negative 5. Okay, so those are the two x values. I guess I should have lettered that one B. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to have you guys do today is go over to the data modeling, data analysis day 2 page. So that is where you had a scatter plot that looked like this. Okay, if you have not finished your scatter plot, please go through and finish it. Just because I need you to have data on your graph before we add a trend line. And then we are going to go through and add these 3 questions, or answer the 3 questions. If you have already finished this, I believe 4th hour was the only class that already finished this, go ahead and skip ahead in the video to the part where I tell you how to make your MobyMax log. That is the only thing that you guys will be working on. So this is for, let's see, 1st and 6th hour who did not finish their data analysis assignment, and I guess anybody from 4th hour who didn't finish it as well. So I need you to finish the scatter plot. This is what mine looks like. If you did the same scale as me, then yours should look very similar. We are going to add what's called a trend line, which we talked about the other day. A trend line is a straight line that models the data. And I actually have this like clear ruler that's from my planner, but it's kind of nice having a clear ruler just so that I can show you guys how I make a trend line. So I want it to be a straight line. I want it to go through as much of the data as possible. And when it can't go through the data, I want there to be about as many dots above it as below it. So, you know, it's imperfect, but we're gonna draw a trend line. I think I'm going to draw mine about here. So I'm just going to draw a straight line through the data. I'm going to put an arrow. Sorry, I'm at my house and Jerry is taking a drink. So if you can hear that, I apologize. So that is going to be a trend line, and I do want to label that, just because, again, we're kind of preparing for a project that we're doing next week. So anything you can label and be able to reference back to will be helpful. And the trend line is helpful mostly if I am missing data. So say I wanted to know how tall somebody would be when they're 20, or I want to know how tall somebody would be when they're 3. The trend line is a way to approximate data, and it also tells me about the correlation, because I can look at the slope of the trend line and get an approximate slope of the data. Okay, so make sure you have your trend line in there. You can make it any color, it just has to be straight, there has to be an arrow, and you do want to make sure that it goes all the way back to the y-axis, because we are going to be talking about the y-intercept in a second. All right, so when you're done with that, go back up to the questions at the top. So there were 3 questions we talked about. And again, if you were in first and sixth hour, we did not get to answer these. So the first one is, what type of correlation matches the scatter plot? Again, we want to know if it is strong or weak, if it's positive, negative, or if there's relatively no correlation. Excuse me. I would say that this is probably a strong positive or strong to weak positive. But I think a strong positive correlation makes sense. Okay. Without more data, it's kind of hard to know. I guess you can say could be weaker with more data. And the only reason I'm saying that maybe it's a little weaker than it appears is just because the nature of the data. So we know that we are measuring the height versus the age of a person, a human being. So there's obviously a lot of variety when it comes to the height of somebody at different ages. And the problem is, if you say, hey, there's a really, really strong correlation, that means that like everybody who is this age is going to be this height. Everybody who is this age is going to be this height. And there's quite a bit of variation there. So there's definitely a trend, like as you get older, you get taller generally until you hit a certain age. But you don't really want to say like, oh yeah, there's a super obvious positive correlation and a really strong trend line, because everybody is going to be different heights. You just can't really predict that based on a super like simple linear model. And then the next question, would it make sense for the y-intercept to be at the origin? So keep in mind, the origin is the ordered pair 0, 0, okay? And it's saying, would it make sense for the y-intercept to be at the origin? Well, right now, my y-intercept is here. The y-intercept is where the trend line runs into the y-axis. So my y-intercept is about 0.26 right now. That's my approximate y-intercept. And I think what you want to think about that question is, okay, well, what is the y-intercept saying? So this is saying that at age 0, okay, a human would be approximately 26 inches long based on this data. And it's saying, would it make sense for the y-intercept to instead be 0, 0? Because I think a lot of times, anytime we're graphing, we're like, oh, 0, 0 makes sense. But what does that mean? Well, at age 0 is when you're 0 years old. So age 0 is birth, right? You're born at age 0, and then a year later you turn 1, and then a year later you turn 2, okay? So it's saying at age 0, which is birth, would you be 0 inches tall, okay? Regardless of how premature a baby is, or regardless of how just small of an infant you might have being born, you're never going to have a baby that is 0 inches tall, okay? That is nothing. Even really small babies are going to be like around a foot tall when they are fully stretched out. So I would say that no, the origin does not make sense. Would not make sense. Purely because no baby is 0 inches tall. Okay, so if that has never happened, a baby being born 0 inches tall, if that's never happened, then that certainly is not going to be a trend you are trying to generalize, right? So that wouldn't make sense. All right, guys, so I have some bad news. My iPad stopped recording. I don't know if it's because it's almost dead or what, but I actually had finished the video and it stopped recording halfway through. So instead of walking you through the last question, like step by step, I am just going to read to you what I wrote and then kind of give you an explanation. But I think we had already finished the second question. So make a sentence to describe the situation being graphed. Think back to the ice cream question that we had yesterday or 2 days ago, where I gave you a scenario like, hey, an ice cream shop is trying to figure out how much money they're going to make. And they decided to make a graph with the temperature and the amount of profit they were making, or the amount of money that they brought in that day. Okay, that was contextual. That was a way for you to know what was going on and to kind of interpret the graph. But with this, I didn't give you anything. I was like, here's a table. Okay, here's a table. This side is age, this side is height, and I gave you no scenario that would make sense for that. We just kind of went with it. I want you to come up with a scenario for me. And here's an example I thought of. So like my family was together and compared the heights of all of my cousins, okay? That's just a very basic scenario. Please do not steal that one. But it would make sense for there to be a group of people together, particularly a group of people that were 5 to 18 when it came to ages. And then it might be a situation where you want to compare height. I don't know. I'm thinking like when I was a kid, we'd stand up against a door frame and like mark our height on the wall. Like you could do that with your cousins too, I suppose. Yesterday in 4th hour, people were saying like, a doctor's office, there's going to be a bunch of patients come in and the doctor's going to take all of their heights down. Or somebody was saying for casting, like there's casting for a movie going on and they need actors that are this age and this height. So there are a lot of scenarios that would make sense with this table. I just want you to come up with one that kind of relates to your life. And just give me a brief sentence on why this table could exist, because that's really important. If you know why you have a table, then you can do a lot more with the data than just saying like, I don't know, these are random numbers and I have no idea about any of it. Like obviously to answer these questions, we had to have a bit more context. And so that's why a discussion was helpful in figuring out the answers. So please do not copy mine, just one sentence on why this could make sense. The last thing I want you to do is to go to your MobyMax progress log. Is that what it's called? Just kidding. Your MobyMax topic log. Okay, that's what it is. And I just put a little sample of kind of what I'm thinking for this. So every day we do MobyMax, I just want a little log of what you did that day, because the problem is I think a lot of people looked back and they're like, oh, I made so much progress. And in reality, like, no, you probably didn't. So just a quick update on like, hey, what's the date? Hey, what was I working on? A lot of people are finishing up that second placement test to see if they improve their level at all. And then, you know, say you were working on adding fractions. And even just down to like, hey, I used some of my game time. Like I had 5 minutes of game time. I used it because I want to use it on MobyMax, and like that's totally fine. So just give me a general idea of this. I don't even need to know like how long you worked. Like I can see that on MobyMax, but just a brief idea so that you can kind of see visually like what's going on. And this is also a good way to keep like a sort of weekly idea of how your level's improving. You can check this anytime you want. Obviously your level's probably not going to improve in one day, but you know, maybe you work really hard 2 weeks in a row and you go up 0.1, you know, you go up a whole 10th of a grade level. Like that would be really great for you to know. And you're like, okay, maybe every 2 weeks, my goal is to go up a little bit more. So you can kind of use this as much as you want. I will definitely make sure you are staying on top of it, but it is really just a tool for you to maximize MobyMax. So yeah, make sure you have that done. Make sure your table of contents is updated. At this point, pretty much all of these things should be done. We have one more day of bell work. We had done both days of the data analysis notes or whatever you want to call those. And then as long as you're keeping these top things updated, I think we're good to go. So you're working on MobyMax for the rest of the hour, and please be good. I will see you guys tomorrow, and we will do our graph of the week. Have a good one. Bye.